Now let's go back to Visual Studio Code to see what it looks like. Okay, created a file here, and you can see it's basically an object with property and values. So this one is using, if you look at extends, extends means to like use based off a certain standard that was already written by somebody else. So they wrote these rules called ESLint recommended. And the code is somewhere here, node modules. If you go node modules at ESLint, you're going to find it somewhere there if you're curious. But all the rules are defined there, manually hard coded, so that we don't have to do it here initially. Okay, then other settings here saying, are you using CommonJS? Is it a node environment versus browser and all that kind of stuff. You can find more about these options in the documentation for ESLint, the website. Now, you might have noticed that my code is now highlighting stuff here. I didn't want this enabled at first. That's because I have an extension, ESLint here, but I'm going to disable it for now because I don't want you to see it just yet. Okay, let's go back to Explorer. Now, this is the code, and I intentionally wrote the code all kind of in a weird style, without indentation here, with a lot of indentation, a lot of spacing between the function name and parentheses, no space before the operator equals, using var instead of let or const, and all that stuff. Using semicolon versus not using semicolon, because I'm trying to trigger some of these rules. Okay, but how do we know if we're doing something bad there? Now let me open a terminal within Visual Studio Code. You can still keep yours or use it here. So you could choose here what kind of terminal. I like doing command prompt. I'm in Windows, so simply what we have to do here is npx space ESLint, and it will check the file, but you have to specify in this case. It seems like it doesn't check by default to detect if there are files. So you got to say, okay, what do you want to lint? I'm going to say index.js. What files? Right? Okay, so it linted that. If you can see, there's one error per line. So it's saying here line 1 column 5. Okay, so if you go to line 1 and then you go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's where the problem is. The counter is assigned a value but never used. So the rule name is usually on the right-hand side. It's the no-unused vars rule. So you can click here, I think. Usually, it seems like this one doesn't work. But you can always copy this rule name and go to the browser to find out what it really means if you're not sure. So you can just go to your favorite search engine and paste that name, and it'll automatically point to the docs here, and you can click the first result. So this is the description of the rules. If you're unsure what it means, details, disallow unused variables, and it has several examples. And you can actually tweak this rule to your own liking. If you scroll down, there are options, and you can see this is the key. If you want to override the already default, you can go to the rules section of your ESLint RC file, and you can specify the rule name as the property. And then for this specific rule, the way you change the properties is by passing an array for the value. The first one being whether you want an error, or it can also be warn, or you can also deactivate this rule altogether. Okay, so going back to Visual Studio Code. So I already know about this rule. This just means, okay, you created a variable, but you're not using it. So what's the point? So that's the point of that rule. Some people like their code base to not have unused variables. So what's a way of fixing it? Well, you got to use this somehow, somewhere. Maybe I'm going to use in the return for the hello. I can say plus counter here. I'm going to save the file, and then I'm going to go to the terminal here. I'm going to run npx space ESLint space index.js again. And there you go. There's no more error there. You notice I use npx. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's because if I go to the node modules directory, there's a .bin and there's a command ESLint here. If I were to type it manually, I have to type node modules /node modules /bin/ESLint, and then the file And I don't want to type this whole thing. So instead of doing that, I just do it in px ESLint, which just means, okay, look for ESLint in this particular directory.